The story begins with a man who stood at the top of the world in terms of wealth, influence, and status. He was not just a billionaire by chance but a man who had spent years navigating the complexities of global business, building empires, and turning struggling companies into powerhouses. His wealth had reached a point where nothing was out of his reach. If he desired a yacht, he could buy 3. If he wanted an island, he could purchase one with the stroke of a pen. If he wished to influence politics, a single phone call would have an impact. Yet, despite having everything money could buy, he carried with him a loneliness that money could not fill. He had experienced love and betrayal in equal measure, and with each failed relationship he became less trusting of words and more skeptical of people's intentions. Over time, he discovered that many who surrounded him cared more for his fortune than for his soul. This man, restless with doubt and searching for clarity, devised a peculiar test that would not just measure loyalty but reveal character at its core. He understood that words were easy, that people could promise love, loyalty, or companionship, but in moments where desires were within reach, their true values emerged. Actions always revealed more than declarations. He wanted to know, not what people would say if asked about their intentions, but what they would do if given the power to make choices without restraint. His idea came one evening as he sat in his private library, sipping a glass of aged whiskey, staring at his collection of rare art. He realized that people often showed who they were when placed in situations of abundance. It was not struggle that revealed character, he thought, but the freedom to choose anything when nothing was out of reach. In deprivation, most people would fight to survive. In abundance, they revealed their heart's truest desires. He wanted to create a situation where choice was unlimited, and temptation was unrestricted, to see who among those around him valued meaning over materialism. The billionaire had 4 women in his life who each, in different ways, were vying for his affection. They were not all openly competing, but he knew each harbored an interest in him beyond casual companionship. The first was a woman of unmatched beauty, the kind whose presence in a room turned heads and silenced conversations. She had the confidence of someone who had always been admired, the elegance of a woman accustomed to wealth, and the determination of someone who believed she was born to live a life of luxury. The second was a woman of intellect, charming with her wit and cleverness, who often engaged him in conversations about business, art, and philosophy. She seemed fascinated by his mind as much as his money, though he wondered if her admiration was for him or for the power his position granted. The third was younger, full of energy and ambition, who adored his lifestyle and often spoke about the possibilities of travel, luxury, and experiences that only someone like him could provide. She was fun, spontaneous, and daring, though he sometimes wondered if her love for adventure masked a love for wealth. The fourth was quieter, more reserved, who often acted as if she did not want to intrude in his life yet always managed to be present when he needed a gentle hand or a listening ear. She gave the impression of sincerity, though he had been deceived enough times not to trust easily. He wanted to see, without asking them directly, who they truly were. Words could be rehearsed, actions could not. So he came up with an unusual test. From his collection of financial instruments, he retrieved 4 identical black credit cards, each tied to accounts with no spending limits. Each card represented access to his immense fortune, and he knew that what a person chose to do with such power would tell him more about them than any conversation ever could. His plan was simple yet revealing. He would give each woman one of these cards and ask her to spend freely, without restrictions, without justification, and without knowing that their choices were being monitored. He would not set rules, he would not ask for receipts, and he would not influence their decisions. He wanted them to act on instinct, to reveal the desires they might otherwise keep hidden. By watching how they used the cards, he believed he would uncover the essence of their characters. When the day arrived, he invited the 4 women separately to his estate under the guise of a casual meeting. In his opulent living room, with its high ceilings, golden chandeliers, and walls lined with priceless artwork, he sat them down one after another. He explained, with a calm tone and a composed smile, that he was giving them something unusual. He presented the black card, sleek and heavy, symbolic of ultimate financial privilege. He told each of them that they could use it for anything they wished. He offered no explanation as to why, only that they were free to spend as they desired. His eyes, calm but watchful, studied their reactions as they held the cards in their hands. The first woman, the beauty who thrived in luxury, let out a delighted laugh, her eyes glimmering as she turned the card in her fingers like it was a jewel. He saw the sparkle of excitement in her face, the kind of look one might have when opening the gates to a dream world. She asked no questions, only expressed her gratitude, though he noticed her mind was already racing with possibilities. The second woman, the intellectual, raised an eyebrow and smiled knowingly. She asked if there were hidden conditions, if he expected something in return, if this was some kind of experiment. He gave her no answers, only told her to use it as she wished. She smirked, intrigued, and accepted it with a confidence that suggested she already had plans. The third, the adventurous one, clapped her hands with joy, saying this was the kind of wild gesture she adored about him. She spoke immediately of trips, experiences, and adventures she could now pursue, and her enthusiasm filled the room. She accepted the card as if it were a ticket to the most thrilling ride of her life. The fourth, the quiet one, hesitated before taking it. She looked at him with uncertainty, as though questioning the sincerity of the gesture. She asked softly why he was doing this, but when he insisted it was simply a gift, she accepted it reluctantly, her hands trembling slightly as she placed the card into her purse. When the meetings ended, he leaned back in his chair and let his thoughts wander. He had set the stage. Now the test was in motion. 4 women, 4 unlimited cards, 4 choices that would reflect their deepest desires. He had no intention of interfering, no interest in directing them, for the truth of people, he believed, was revealed when they acted without fear of consequence or lack of opportunity. What they bought would not just be items or experiences, it would be confessions of the heart, silent admissions of what they valued most. When the billionaire set his plan into motion, he had not considered including anyone beyond the 4 women. They were the focus of his test, the ones he believed needed to be revealed to him in truth. Yet life has a way of placing lessons in places we least expect, and for him, the lesson came from someone he had long overlooked. His maid had been in his service for years, a quiet presence in the mansion, moving gracefully through her duties with a sense of care that made her invisible to most but deeply necessary to the functioning of his home. She was not flashy, not loud, and never demanded attention. She was the kind of woman who blended into the background, noticed only when something was out of place or when she was not there to fix it. Her hands carried the stories of labor, her eyes carried the weight of experiences unspoken, and her heart carried a strength forged in silence. On the day of the distribution of the cards, she happened to be in the room arranging a tray of glasses when the billionaire was speaking to one of the women. She had not intended to listen, but as she moved quietly in and out, she could not help overhearing the words. The sight of the sleek black card caught her eye briefly, though she quickly turned away. To her, wealth was not a fantasy but a distant world she observed from the margins. She lived in modesty, saving what she could from her wages, sending money to her family in her small hometown, and ensuring that her younger siblings could have opportunities she never had. The idea of being given such a card was unimaginable. Yet fate works in strange ways, and later that evening, the billionaire, amused by a sudden impulse, called her into the room. He handed her one of the remaining cards, perhaps out of curiosity, perhaps as a joke, perhaps because he wanted to see how someone who had never lived in luxury would respond when placed on equal footing with the others. She looked at him in confusion, her hands refusing at first to take the card. "Sir, I don't understand," she said softly, her voice filled with hesitation. But he insisted, telling her she could use it however she wished. She asked again if it was a mistake, if he truly meant for her to have it, and when he nodded with the same calm assurance he had given the others, she accepted it reluctantly. She held it not with excitement but with a weight of responsibility, as though it were not a gift but a test she did not know she was prepared to take. While the 4 women went off into the world, each making choices that reflected their desires, the maid sat alone that evening in her small quarters, staring at the black card on her nightstand. She knew what it represented, a key to possibilities she had never dreamed of. With it, she could buy clothes she could never afford, dine at places she had only seen in magazines, or even secure a home for herself far away from service. But her mind did not wander toward personal luxuries. Instead, her thoughts drifted to her family. She remembered her mother, still working long hours at a market stall, her father, whose health had been declining, her siblings who struggled with education in a town that lacked resources, and the children in her neighborhood who walked miles just to reach a rundown school. She thought of the church roof that leaked when it rained, the clinic with outdated equipment, and the neighbors who often went without proper meals. She realized in that moment that the card in her hand was not simply money. It was a chance to rewrite stories, to fill gaps, to mend lives that had been bent under the weight of poverty. Over the next few days, she began to act quietly. She traveled back to her hometown, discreetly paying off debts for her parents, arranging for her father's medical care, and enrolling her siblings in better schools. She purchased supplies for the local children, uniforms, books, and proper shoes. She donated funds to repair the church, to restore the roof so that rain would no longer interrupt worship. She gave money to the small clinic, ensuring that it could buy medicine and new equipment to serve the sick. She did not broadcast her actions, did not post them on social media, and did not boast to anyone. She simply acted out of love and duty, out of an understanding that blessings meant little if they were hoarded and not shared. The maid's use of the card was in stark contrast to the choices of the four women. While they indulged in jewels, designer wardrobes, luxury vacations, and lavish experiences meant to elevate their status, she invested in lives, in futures, and in community. For her, the card was never about what she could gain but about what others had been denied for too long. In every purchase she made, she thought not of herself but of the faces of those who had always gone without. And each time she swiped that card, she carried with her not a thrill of ownership but a quiet satisfaction that someone else's burden had been lightened. The billionaire, as planned, monitored each account closely. He saw the patterns almost immediately. With the first woman, charges flooded in from high-end boutiques, luxury jewelry stores, and private salons. With the second, he saw investments in rare art, memberships in exclusive clubs, and luxury intellectual retreats in Europe. With the third, the records showed first-class travel, extreme adventure packages, and glamorous resorts across the world. And then, with the maid's account, he paused. What he saw was not luxury but life. The payments reflected school enrollments, hospital bills, donations to clinics, construction material for repairs, and charity foundations. At first, he thought it might be a mistake, that she misunderstood the purpose. But as he traced each transaction, the story unfolded clearly. She had used his wealth not to elevate herself but to lift others. He found himself sitting alone in his study, staring at the lists of transactions, speechless. It was not the money that stunned him, he had more than enough to cover the expenses without noticing the loss. It was the intention, the purity of thought behind each purchase, the quiet strength it took for someone who had never tasted luxury to resist it even when it was handed freely. He realized that while the four women had revealed the desires of their hearts through indulgence, the maid had revealed something deeper, something he had almost forgotten existed, selflessness in its purest form. For the first time in years, the billionaire felt something stir within him, a feeling that went beyond admiration, beyond gratitude. He realized that wealth had blinded him to the simplest truths, that love and loyalty could not be measured in words or appearances but in the choices people made when faced with temptation. The maid had not asked for anything, had not sought recognition, and had not even considered that he was watching. She had acted because it was who she was, and in doing so, she had shown him more than any test could have revealed.